But anyways, that's kind of
yeah.
it's kind of the
Obviously, this is the Model 3 battery here.
yeah. Well, this there used to be 4 of them, so this one here came out of this side. That one of our customers wanted it, so we sold it to them. But this thing does not come apart. You can't get any further than this. It's welded all over the place. This thing right here, this is called a super bottle. See a little man on there? And we'll put it over here, this way, okay? See that little black man there? See if you can zoom in on it. Okay? This is the little logo on the super bottle. How about I do that? That'll make it easier. See that smiling face? This is really cool. This bottle does all the cooling.
For the battery.
For everything.
The car.
Everything.
The cabin.
Everything.
Battery, cabin, motor.
Everything that you would have in your, so you've got a heat exchanger here for your AC system. You've got a heat exchanger here for the battery module. Everything goes through this little bottle right here. We were really thrilled with this. A little lever here, and I can't move it right now because somebody tightened the bolts up. But anyways, it's got the ability to change. This changes everything. Now, you were asking before, why don't we see the guys in Detroit do things? Do you know how many different fiefdoms you have to have in order to make this happen? I mean, the engine cooling guys, oh no, you can't do that. I own that. Those are my hoses. This is my hose, and you can't have that. And this space is mine. And but the arguing and bickering that goes on about cooling is just out of this world. And they took this. This crosses like powertrain, HVAC, on and on and on. And here they've created something that this isn't the first time that we've ever talked about doing this. I mean, we've talked about it a lot. But because of the Detroit infrastructure, the way that cars are designed, you have this, you stay out of my territory, you stay out of my territory. You can't have that if you want to try and develop something like this because it crosses too many different lines. This, I think, is really kind of cool. Now,
this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers. Your support helps our channel maintain viability and add value to everybody involved. So, as you saw when we opened today, we kind of opened with Sandy Munro at his facility in Auburn Hills, Michigan. The description you saw was sort of 2 versions of a talk we had about batteries while in a meeting with him. And I kind of chose to dive back into this video and area because I think that Sandy's success in assisting the big OEMs will determine whether or not they're going to make it into the future. So, to start off with, in the good old days of 5 years ago, as you see with the photos of Model 3s being shipped to VW by plane when first introduced, the cars arrived and were taken apart for ideas that would go into new cars produced by VW. This process is fairly common and has gone on for 100 years. The cost of buying and taking apart these cars is much higher than Sandy dismantling them and writing a report and then selling off parts that were of particular interest to his large OEM clients. Sandy's looking into a Tesla is a great value to the big companies because he can assist them in the younger engineers knowing what they're looking at rather than doing on-the-job training to figure it all out. Cycle time to replication or mastery is much shorter in this way. as we observe in the video of competing OEM CEOs from Ford and GM, they are articulating the process of replicating Tesla supply chain all the way back to mines, which helps them convince shareholders of serious efforts to be relevant, even as they are years behind. Helping them get these new parts into production is also a forte of Sandy Munro. As you've seen in many of his videos, he discusses not only parts sitting there, but optimizing manufacturing process to getting those new parts to market. It has been fun watching GM 8L avoid direct consulting from Tesla while working hard to replicate everything Tesla is doing to avoid becoming irrelevant. So at the beginning of our show, we posed the question of whether or not Sandy Magic will work for these clients, and the answer is, I don't think so. They don't seem inclined to get the LG to build a version of Tesla's 2170, so they will have to remake the whole thing and do all the testing on these new concepts while losing market share all the way. We shall see. One of the things that we've talked about before that I think is at play here is if you go back and review how computers developed and eventually standardized on the Microsoft operating system, is that there are a number of possibilities of how machines were going to be designed. The end users were eager to get their solutions done in terms of how they're going to use the computers, but there needed to be some standardization of what everybody was using, because that would enable end users to more easily use the technology. It's my belief that we're kind of in that mode right now with batteries, where again we have successfully Lucid, as well as Rivian, as well as Tesla using their 2170s. And I think where we see big progress from the OEMs is when they finally sort of bite the bullet and admit that Tesla is the solution, and that way they can have all their suppliers sort of focus on one entity. The other thing that I see going on here is that, I kind of have to agree, GM particularly seems to have a lot of pride in the fact that they're going to take over the market and take it away from Tesla by 2025. Despite chip problems, they don't have a stable battery, they don't have the charging facilities, all these different things that customers perceive to be valuable illustrations of seriousness in the marketplace. I'm intrigued because the other backdoor thing that seems to be sneaking up on the industry is that GM / Ford and others have been really focused on finding ways to master Tesla supply chain and figure out if they can put a crimp in that supply chain. And an interesting point popped up recently was the fact that, until you get to scale from your manufacturing facility, you're losing money on every car. It's just a matter of how much. And the current large entities don't have any problem with losing money because they're making so much money from their ICE vehicles as they ramp up their EV efforts. What's fascinating to me is the very thing that the OEMs were trying to do to Tesla, through the back door, Tesla's starting to do to them. And what I mean by that is, if we take a look backwards at the supply chain of Tesla, what started to happen is that manufacturing batteries is the easy part. The question is, does your manufacturing organization actually have supplies that would go in those batteries? And it turns out that, BYD and some of the other, Chinese manufacturers have supply chain for the battery insides. Same thing for some of the Korean manufacturers. like LG. So the question that comes up is Tesla wants more batteries and is now expanding the number of entities that it's buying batteries from. The problem that I see happening, though, is the more batteries Tesla buys, the fewer battery packs are going to be available for competing entities from those same suppliers. And one would also expect that if you are selling as many cars as Tesla is, you can start playing little games. For example, Tesla can simply order a large amount of batteries, and that places them ahead of other entities that can't commit to a larger battery counts because they don't have, the guaranteed car sales to do it. So this pickle, I think, is going to become a problem, particularly for the smaller manufacturers, because the smaller the number of battery packs you're buying, the higher the per unit cost is, which therefore doesn't make you competitive with Tesla. The other problem that's going on right now is how will the large OEMs deal with the fact that, they're even on terrestrial storage facilities. Tesla is probably the largest in the world, but does have competitors. How do they address sort of this component as well? Because the terrestrial batteries don't have to have lithium and other things that make it light for driving, but it still represents a closeout of access to resources needed by other entities to be viable. Hence the reason why we're hearing from GM, they're going all the way back to the mines to line up supplies of raw materials to feed into the batteries that they're going to be building over time. So there's a lot of work to be done by Sandy to help these folks be competitive. I believe that we'll probably end up with half of them going under, the other half sticking around, and the degree to which they're willing to embrace the olive branch offered by Tesla is going to make a difference in terms of what happens here. At any rate, this ends our formal process when it comes to discussion of the Sandy Munro magic helping the OEMs to stay in business. I wanted to briefly look at our health tip for today, and that is I ran into an ear, nose, and throat specialist at one of the major hospitals, and he pointed out that particularly if you're getting into your late 40s and 50s, that people make a point of trying to do online hearing testing. The reason for this is that it turns out that if you are having some hearing challenges that might occur, it's better to address it early, because then you can kind of use devices to make sure you're stimulating the brain when it comes to certain sounds. So for example, if you have a hearing problem, don't have it addressed, and then you get older, what ends up happening is you now have a huge problem, which is you can't, your brain doesn't register those frequencies anymore. So therefore, but if you had dealt with it earlier with an earpiece, etc., you will now still be able to hear those, but in this case with the help of the earpieces. He recommended Sonos as well as Bose coming out with devices in this space in January, and they're over the counter, so it's not a severe cost to address this issue. At any rate, once again, thanks for joining us. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, German, au revoir, French, le Heathrow, Hebrew, Choda Hafez, Farsi, Strasvice, Russian, Ni Hao Ma, Chinese, that's hello in Chinese, not goodbye. Arrivederci, Italian, hey do in Swedish, and in Jamaica we say enough respect, walk good man. Thanks for joining us, have a great day, and bye for now.